Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of A Complete History of Isavar. I'm your host LK and today we're going to be covering everything in Isavar between episodes 0 and 44. Now if you're here at the premiere, I'd just like to say hello. If you have any questions, make sure to ask them now in the chat. And of course, if you're watching this after the premiere, hello as well. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask them down below in the comments. Alternatively, you can also ask them in the community Discord server as well. There's a link for that in the description. As this is the first episode of this series, I'll explain a little bit about how the series is going to work now. A Complete History of Isavar will be monthly, with each new episode covering the last 4 Isavar videos from that month. We'll be talking a lot about the building that I'm doing, and a lot about Isavar's lore, because that is something that I want to share here in more depth. So with that out of the way, let's get right into it. Isavar started out with several time-lapse videos. If I do say so myself, they were pretty boring, with most of them only having default Minecraft music in the background. Now there were 5 total of these time-lapse videos, and they covered the basic starting things that every world needs, such as getting food, enchantments, basic tools and armor, and even the construction of our current mob farm. The first proper Isavar video started out at what would one day become the center of Fallas. Fallas is a desert city that's within the Zalaridge kingdom, the same kingdom that we've been working on for the past 44 Let's Play videos, which equates to roughly 1 year in real life. During a few of the videos after this, I worked on building up some essential farms, such as the iron farm, and obtained several necessary items, such as the wither skulls that we would need to be able to fight withers, so that we could obtain a couple of beacons. We then spent a lot of time working on Fallas, building up several of the city blocks throughout the city, the world's first host church, and even a custom reservoir that would eventually feed water with Fallas. We updated to 1.16 around episode 10, and then we spent that entire video exploring the Nether and seeing just how much it had changed. After exploring the Nether, I had proceeded to work on more of the buildings within Fallas. The build style for Fallas is really simple. They're just sandstone boxes with a little bit of randomization in using a custom texture pack. We even worked on a couple of parks, some more buildings, and then built up a small camp above the iron farm in place of the village that was there before. Because of how many episodes we need to cover today, I'll be skipping ahead a few videos to where we start the current project of Zalaridge. Zalaridge I also refer to as the Spawn City. It is the capital city of the Zalaridge Kingdom. Work for this city technically started in episode 24 when we worked on laying out a portion of Zalaridge. But we'll skip that part and head straight into when we start properly working on it, because that was really just when we started outlining where a couple of your first buildings would be. We started immediately with the construction of the storage room. This is one that I still use today, and it's very important because, well, it's where all of the world's resources are, and it's where I store everything. It's just basically the central storage room of Isavar. With the most necessary thing I needed to build, that is the storage room, out of the way, I decided that it was time to move on to another necessary thing, moving the nether portal into its permanent home. Now, in Isavar, nether portals are located within the nether churches. It's just a way for us to have some lore explaining why there's a portal to another dimension inside of each city. So, naturally, in order to put the nether portal inside of Zalaridge, we needed to build the nether church that would reside within Zalaridge. So this stuck with Isavar's lore, as I just explained, because really the only legalized location for nether portals is within the churches of the nether. We'll have a video explaining the nether church eventually, so keep an eye out for that. After working on the nether church, I spent a couple more videos just expanding Zalaridge. A large part of this were the walls that surround the city. These walls are tall with a cobblestone andesite stone center that has extra depth and detail added in with stone brick slabs and stairs. At the top of the walls, the battlements are made out of granite. In Isavar's texture pack, the polished granite texture is a sort of granite-colored brick block. This allows the battlements to stick in with the stone theme, but also has a nice contrast and adds some more color to the rest of the wall. After I worked on the walls, I decided to start working on a market. This market would be a place that would employ the citizens of Zalaridge, as well as provide citizens with a place to buy certain goods. We're not quite sure what the market sells at this point, but I'm sure it does sell a lot of variety in goods, because I mean, there's a lot of buildings in the market and it wouldn't make sense if they're all selling the same thing. After finishing the market, it was time to start a new project outside of Zalaridge. So we started working on the Zagala Nether Colony. Now, the Zagala Nether Colony was a way for me to break up the repetition that was working on a single city for a long time, and I actually really enjoyed the slight break that working on this colony gave me. I built the Nether Colony strategically, constructing a fort that could be used to easily defend the colony in case of attack, homes for researchers to live within, and even a wall that could protect the colony from an attack from one side. In the lore, this colony was built by Zagala and the Nether Church. It's a place for them to research the Nether and its inhabitants safely without having to return through a portal every single time they need to rest. One of the most important parts, if not the most important part of Isavar, is its lore. Now, until episode 30, and by extension now with this channel, I didn't really have a good way to share the lore of Isavar with everyone. Episode 30 was really the first video that featured a lore time-lapse. It's basically a time-lapse with me talking about a certain part of Isavar's lore in it. This has evolved into becoming one of my favorite aspects about editing Isavar videos. Mainly because it encourages me to work on lore every week, and time-lapses are just a lot less boring and provide me with a consistent way to share the lore of Isavar, especially something relating to what we're doing in a Let's Play video. After this, I spent a lot of time working on Zalaridge. Using that time, I built up an inn that was complete with an interior where visitors to the city could stay and rest. We then worked on building up the warehouse district. It's basically a section of Zalaridge with large warehouse buildings that are designed to store the goods that pass through it, as Zalaridge is one of the largest import-export cities within Isavar. The reason for this is because Zagala is right around in the center of all of the kingdoms in Isavar, so it makes sense that a lot of the goods would pass directly through Zagala through Zalaridge. With the warehouse district done, it was time to work on our next big build in Zalaridge. This build was our Wihos Church. Wihos is the largest religion in Isavar. It has a following of nearly half of the entire human population. Now, we will be doing a more in-depth, pretty detailed Wihos lore video on this channel eventually, but for now I need to work a bit more on Wihos lore, just so that way I can finalize it and get the different aspects and more of the gods worked out. With Zalaridge's Wihos Church completed, I decided that it was time to begin working on the government buildings of Zagala. As I mentioned earlier, Zalaridge is the capital city of Zagala, so it makes sense that the government of Zagala would be located within Zalaridge. So this is where we built up the government buildings, so that this is basically where the government officials of Zagala run the government. Now, Zagala's government is divided into 3 different sections. I'm going to cover a little bit of it today, but we'll have a more in-depth video later on once I get a little bit more of the finer things worked out. So first off, we have the king. He basically operates the military and can make basically royal decrees that are laws that he can make. Then we have the Queen's Court. Their main job is to manage the courts and pass the majority of laws. And then finally we have the Nobility Council. This is the place where the noble houses of Zagala are represented. Their main job is to appoint people for various positions throughout the kingdom for the king to later approve. With these larger buildings out of the way, we could begin to start working on the more natural parts of Zalaridge. My first project for this was to construct Castle Park. This is a monument to the greatest Zagalian citizens, basically just the people who've contributed the most to the kingdom. After this, I spent episode 43 working outside of Zalaridge. I decided to go out to the site of a town that we constructed entirely in that video. Now this town was called Vasten, and I actually really enjoyed working on it. Its style was a very nice break from Zalaridge's, and I really enjoyed working on it. Vasten's style uses a lot of slabs, stairs, and trapdoors to provide each build with a ton of depth, along with adding a couple of towers into various buildings within the town. The main trade or export of Vasten's is books, both the enchanted and the plain versions. However, they really make most of their money from the enchanted versions. Vasten has a powerful enchanter. This is something that we'll be talking a lot more about once we get deeper into the magic lore, as enchanting is a pretty big part of magic. Vasten takes orders for both copies of books from rich nobles and cities, but also for powerful enchantments such as mending, which they excel at creating. And finally, that brings us to episode 44, which is the last one we'll be covering in today's video. I spent episode 44 finishing up the last buildings and city blocks left within Zalaridge. The reason that I decided to make this video, building up the last buildings, is because I decided that the next one, episode 45, was going to be us finishing the wall and the last details throughout the city, so that way we could go through and work on some more things outside of the city before episode 50, which is the world tour. And with episode 44 done, that really brought the city extremely close to being completed. This is something that we've been working on for pretty much 6 months at this point, so it's very exciting. And, well, that was really the first episode of A Complete History of Isavar. I really hope you enjoyed it. These videos will be a lot more in-depth, talking about lore and building in the future, but because of how much I needed to cover today, I decided to not make this video extremely long and to just basically give a short recap of all of Isavar that we've worked in for pretty much the last 11 months almost. So if you were here and you haven't watched the Isavar Let's Play for some reason, make sure you go check it out in the description. And if you're here at the premiere or shortly after, I should be live over on Twitch, most likely working on Isavar, so come over and hang out. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I've been your host LK, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.